Oh, hello. I was straying again this week. I was watching another one of Josh McDowell's videos, and he was theorizing that the Gospel of Luke was written, as it says, to Theophilus, but he was theorizing that Theophilus perhaps hired Luke to seek out these eyewitnesses, do the investigation like a detective, and to find out these eyewitnesses. And then he even says that he has a friend that's a lawyer that told him that if they had to go in a court of law, that these secondhand accounts would still be considered eyewitness. And we all know that that would be called hearsay. You don't go and just into courtroom and just say, well, so-and-so said this, so-and-so told me that, without them being present. It would be called hearsay and thrown out. But and so I jumped ahead. I've been going through the church fathers anyways, the early church fathers, and I jumped ahead into the next volume, the second volume of the early church fathers, and found that they date Theophilus' birth at approximately 115 of the current era. And so just thinking from that, the Christians and Josh McDowell keep arguing for early dates of these Gospels, and now we're going to say that Theophilus hired Luke. So that's going to bring that hiring probably to like 135 CE anyways. And of course the reasoning why they have placed Jesus in history prior to the destruction of Jerusalem is because you're not going to be able to go back and find any eyewitnesses, because all these people were just scattered, taken up and made slaves, many of them crucified. And so it's, you look at Qumran, and it shows how that was totally destroyed around 68 to 70 AD, around the same time. There's no eyewitnesses there to tell you what happened. But at any rate, I found Theophilus, started reading what he had to say, and it's quite interesting. And I think a quite fruitful thing for us all to read. And we're told that Theophilus was made the Bishop of Antioch in approximately 168 AD, and that he died approximately 181 to 188, depending on the sources you're reading. And so it has got to be somewhere in that time that he's making these writings. We're told that he wrote commentaries on all the Gospels, that he wrote a massive work, or what they call no mean work, so it must have been a fairly good sized work against Marcion, which again kind of ties it to the Gospel of Luke, because from what I've been able to find out, that Marcion's Gospel was the Gospel of Luke, minus all the genealogies and the birth narratives and whatnot. But none of these things we have, but we do have 3 books that he wrote to a man called Autolycus, who was a pagan. And evidently Theophilus was a pagan philosopher, but they claim that he studied the scriptures and gained a knowledge of the scriptures, and he was saved. And now, as I said, in 168 AD, he has become the Bishop of Antioch, and he is the 6th in line of successors ever since this church was founded by Paul in Antioch. And I found interesting within his writings is that we're all told by our pastors that the word Christian was a derogatory term that was first coined in Antioch because these people worshipped Jesus. Well, Theophilus doesn't agree with that at all. He says that Christians are called Christians because they have been anointed by God. In other words, these people have come to know God. And just as I've said in my other videos how I believe that God is a force that deals with each and every one of us and keeps the earth and the whole universe in an orderly manner, and this, it turns out, is exactly what Theophilus is saying in his writings. Excuse me. I did find very interesting is that Theophilus does not mention the word Jesus, meaning Jesus Christ or any Messiah. The only time the word Jesus is used, it is Jesus, the Son of None. In one instance, I actually found it spelled S-U-N, and other instance it was S-O-N, but still the Son of None. This is Joshua of the Old Testament, the leader that took up after Moses had passed on. In his second book, writing to Theophilus is writing to Autolycus, he brings this point up once again about statues, about gods, about idols. And he points out, this is in his second chapter of book 2, that they're totally worthless. Even after they're made, they're just stone, or they're made out of wood or brass or whatever they're made out of. They're still just wood. It's still just stone until someone takes it and puts it either in their house or in a temple, and then all of a sudden people start sacrificing to it and praying to it, and that is at that point that it becomes a god. But it is still just a hunk of wood, still just a hunk of stone. But then he goes on and says something very similar to what I was telling you in my series of videos where I said that Jesus is the Antichrist, that he is a false image. And this is exactly what he is telling Autolycus here. And he picks up and this portion after talking about these stone and wood idols. And this is your case too. When you read the histories and the genealogies of these so-called gods, for when you read of their births, you think of them as men, but afterwards you call them gods and you worship them, not reflecting or understanding that when they are born, they were exactly such beings as you read of before. And before, he's talking about the statues, and he's also referring to his first book when he has actually gone through and discussed the various Greek gods and points out that they are just people that were just made up by philosophers, by Greek poets, Greek writers, and by demons.